Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Donahue, and I'm the Education Curator at the Wingate Museum of Art at Hendrix College. Thank you for joining us for this evening's program, which is part of the Let Us March On exhibition. This exhibition includes a rich mix of photographs, artwork, artifacts, interactives, and narrative text, which document and contextualize the Black Lives Matter movement in Arkansas. Let Us March On was guest curated by Stephanie Sims and is on view 24/7 in our window gallery through January 22nd. You will also find a video tour of the exhibition on the museum website at wingatemuseum.org. While we are hosting this evening's program virtually, we want to acknowledge that the Wingate Museum of Art at Hendrix College occupies the traditional homelands of the Osage, Quapaw, and Caddo. We offer respect and gratitude to the Indigenous peoples who have cared for the land over generations. Now let me introduce our panelists. Tim Campbell is a student at the Clinton School of Public Service and a recent appointee to the Governor's Task Force to advance the state of law enforcement in Arkansas. Tim organized several protests in Little Rock last summer. We also have Kevin Martin. Kevin Martin is a 2020 Hendrix graduate and a teacher for the KIPP Delta College Preparatory School in Helena, Arkansas. He organized demonstrations in Helena, West Helena last summer. We are so pleased to have Stephanie Sims with us as our moderator for this evening's conversation. As I mentioned, Stephanie, who is the director of the University Museum and Cultural Center at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, curated the Let Us March On exhibition. If you have any questions for Stephanie or either of the panelists, please type them in the chat box. And with that, I will turn the program over to you now, Stephanie.
Thank you, Sarah. And again, thank you, Tim and Kevin, for joining today. And like I said before, we're going to do a discussion, and I'm really excited about some things that we talk about. So just you guys kind of like just kind of chime in at your own pace when I ask some questions, and you can talk to me as much as you like, and we can definitely dig in. Okay, you ready? Awesome. Okay, can you guys tell me a little bit about the start of the Black Lives Matter movement and explain to me why you think the death of George Floyd was a turning point for the African American community? And I think we'll go ahead and go with Kevin first.
I feel like the start of the Black Lives Matter movement is I don't know how to like necessarily mark its beginning, as we know that like it goes back pretty far. But in terms of what I feel like it's about, I definitely feel like it's centering Black lives around this idea that we're being disproportionately affected in a society that we were brought to, in a society that we helped build. And so the death of George Floyd, and I cannot forget to mention Breonna. Oh, I said we lost audio.
I can hear you.
Okay, but yeah, like the death of George Floyd, and I cannot forget to mention Breonna Taylor, was just honestly a turning point. And I have to attest to the fact that it has to do with the pandemic. I just felt like people had the time. That's definitely how I felt. I feel like, any other time, yes, this is something that upsets us. It's something that we're unfortunately getting a little too used to. But given the state of the world at the time, I feel like we all had the time to honestly, like, take the time to put this at the top of our priorities as it should have been for so long now. And so with that, yeah, I feel like the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor really, really sparked a lot of what we were doing. But I definitely feel like, yeah, it's definitely also having to do with the pandemic life, and also just this idea of, yeah, it's been an important issue, and yeah, it just gave us the time to tackle it now. And I'm glad that we were able to mobilize around the world. And I just hope it's something that we continue to do. But at the same time, I'm noticing in the media that we're not. It's something that frustrates me. I know that I try to, like, I'm a teacher. I try to consistently stay active within my community at least. And it honestly gets me down that, like, me helping mobilize the community this summer when I first got back, and just the lack of support that I see as I continue going. It definitely shows me that, like, could have been energy early. But I don't know. But yeah, I feel like, yeah, there's definitely importance in the Black Lives Matter movement. Um, but yeah, it definitely has its moments where, I don't know. Yeah, people definitely show it more importance.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like you have a feeling of it's about time, that is beginning to happen. And even I love the point that you made about how it being the pandemic, and you do believe people had enough time to really think about it and kind of let it just settle. Not really settle, but just kind of really ponder on it and say, this is something wrong here. We actually do need to make a change. So thank you so much, Kevin. Tim, if you like, I can ask the question again, or if you're ready, you can go ahead and make your statement.
Um, so if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes, so I was asking if you could tell me a little bit about the start of the Black Lives Matter movement and explain to me why you think the death of George Floyd was a turning point for our community.
Okay, great. So I want to be clear. I'm not an official member of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think there's a lot of conversation around what that is, and it's an organization. And I think it's very different from the chant that's being chanted when people are protesting. So I wanted to make that distinction first. And I also think that the death of George Floyd, mm, I think that the work that has been pushing this movement for years, for centuries, for decades, has always been done. It has always been done. It's continued. It's never stopped. I think that specifically within the George Floyd situation, the right cameras turned the way of the movement. And that's kind of like the way I like to see it. And I think that the most deadliest weapon to the issues that most minorities in America face, the most deadliest weapon is a camera phone. Because what it has done is created this sort of highlight reel of traumatizing events that you can kind of play back and click, almost like for murder porn, where you can, hey, click here, there's a death, click here, it's a death, click here, it's a death. And you have to continually play these things back. And to the point where now we have 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds that know exactly who George Floyd was, that watched the video and are also, saddened by the effects. So I just think that, the camera phone has switched what the movement and what the work looks like. And as far as it being a national and worldwide movement, I think we finally conjured up enough tension to get the attention of the right cameras to get this sort of stage that has been broadcast. But I never like to think that the movement is new. I feel like the movement has been going on since for 400 to 500 years now, in different ways, different areas, different people, and it has looked different, depending on the struggles that, marginalized people have faced. So I think specifically for George Floyd, and like Kevin spoke on Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, um, it's almost like when these people are killed, it's almost like a family thing now. It's almost like that text message you get at 3 in the morning, or that phone call you get at 4 in the morning to say, "Hey, such and such passed," or "Such and such didn't make it." And social media, what social media has done is created this close, cohesive bond within these late night hours of that's similar to these late night hours of receiving texts or phone calls that are unfortunate. And I think that when we see that come down the Facebook timeline, we see that come down the Instagram timeline, it's very similar, and it hits home just like as if someone was to call you at 3 a.m. and say someone didn't make it. It's very unfortunate, and I think that this time made it different. And I go back to quoting Kevin, people were fed up. And I think what honed in on it was the power of the camera phone. You didn't just see the shooting. You didn't just see him running around. You seen the entire clip of a system on the top of someone's neck for 9 minutes. You've seen the entire clip. You've seen the emotion. You've seen him call for his mom. You've seen him plead for his life. You got to see the entire sort of interaction with everyday Black and brown people against a system, but you got to see it in one enclosed situation. And I feel like it erupted the world. So that's pretty much my take on it. I believe that the movement has continued. I think it will continue, and I think it has always been a movement, and the work has been going on. I think people like Kevin and myself are just taking tips and pointers from my answers to push that movement forward.
So that was very well said from you both. And because of when I thank you guys for mentioning Breonna Taylor, because a lot of times, and I'm just speaking on behalf of being a Black woman in this discussion, a lot of times we kind of get looked over, in a way. And a lot of times the protests look a little bit different between our men versus our women. So I was wondering, what is your take on that as far as with that statement?
Tim, you can take it first.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you touched in on Black women. Me personally, I feel like Black women have been at the forefront of every movement, and I was having that has been involving the progress of people that look like us. And I think that I was having a conversation with someone interested, and they were saying that in a Million Man March, led by Dr. King, um, there was a group of women that actually handed out waters and sandwiches for the entire duration. They made sandwiches throughout their entire duration. And so basically, it was hot. People had full metal jackets, two-tone back then. So it's hot. People really can't, stand up for too long. And you had these women to come in to feed millions of people, and there couldn't be too much bias because it was a diverse group. It was white people, it was Black people there. And they were sort of the energy source for this movement, that has been predominantly looked at as a movement or an event capitalized by the leadership of Black men. But the fuel has been Black women. And that's just one example. I think in the Breonna Taylor case, I think that I'm happy that, she got the attention of the Oprahs, of the larger platforms in the world, because you're right. A lot of Black women that are killed at the hands of police officers are not mentioned. And also during this pandemic, the thing has been, domestic violence has went up, over 50% on a lot of households. But they are not giving the demographics to who's being victim to these domestic violence cases. And they're the same women that we're talking about. They're the same women sending their kids to school every morning. They're the same women telling their Black boys to take their hood off when they go in the stores. They're the same Black women that are telling their Black girls to speak up loud in class. And I think that there's multiple ways that Black women are left out of the movement. And a lot of, I guess in the heterosexual volume of things, it's like, oh yeah, they left Black men out and they left Black people out. Yes, they left Black people out, but they more so left Black women out. And so we talk about another situation with the New Africa movement, led in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi. And what, we had shootouts occur, and pretty much they wanted to resettle. And it was also Malcolm X and different, movement characters and players. They wanted to move down south and recapture that land and to name it New Africa and start a new settlement of what Blackness would look like. on these lands of America. And so it's a funny story. So after the shootout and things kind of got rough, they had to call Michigan. They had to call Michigan for help. And this was 1967, I believe. It was Rosa Parks who answered that phone. It was Rosa Parks who answered the phone and assisted them in a situation that has been lost from history. So even with Daisy Bates, I still don't think Daisy Bates gets her flowers, the flowers that she deserves. The bravery. We know about 9 people that went into the school, but it was 100 people to sign up to go into the school. She hosted training. She hosted sit-in training. She hosted non-direct action violence training. She hosted so many different things besides just walking a group of kids into the school. So I definitely agree with that statement. And there's been a lot of wrap around protecting Black women and what that looks like. And a lot of people have been running to the defense of guns and arms and bearing arms, but their protection is, Black men, especially, we have to understand that protection doesn't just look like bearing arms. That doesn't just look physical. It also looks a lot like emotional. It looks a lot like it's spiritual. It looks a lot like communication. It looks a lot like being assertive. It looks a lot different, than just bearing arms. And I think, being a Black male, I constantly have to check myself, to know that, protection isn't just grease and elbows. It's also communication. It's also telling the women that are around you in proximity that you don't have romantic relationships with, that you love them, that you care for them, and that you hope they have a great day. It looks a lot different. So I'm glad you brought that question up. I didn't talk over my time a little bit, so I'm gonna pass the ball to Kevin.
It's okay. I'm just really glad that I have my tissue over here having this discussion with you guys, because I am very I can kind of get emotional. I am indeed a woman. So but thank you so much for your comment. Thank you. Okay, Kevin, if you want to go right ahead, I got my tissue ready.
Honestly though, for real, like what he said, for real.
And I was trying to keep myself from doing the church, but I just did it anyway. But
right, I swear, I'm like, yeah, he talking,
yeah.
he talking.
Yes, absolutely. But go right ahead, Kevin.
Oh yeah, well, for sure. Just piggybacking off what he said, like it's definitely something that you notice throughout history and that you notice today. When when Tim started his last answer, when he said the whole idea of the Black Lives Matter movement being like this dual, sometimes triad movement in terms of like it's an organization, people just chant it. Sometimes people want to define it as like this idea of, being for all Black people, when honestly at its root, as we talked about, like it's, and I'll quote Angela Davis in that, like I saw her at a social justice conference, and she talked about it. When you think of Black, you think of Black man. When you think of white, when you think of white, you think of white man. When you think of woman, you think of white woman. It's like, where is that space for Black women in the world? Because they're never looked at. Like there's nothing that you think of that gives you that idea of a Black woman. Like biasly, that's what I'm referring to. For me, like I grew up in a single mom household with 3 older sisters in my house. So like for me, Black women did it all for me. They were my moms, they were my sisters. Like that's just like what I knew them as. And so, but like Tim said, it's something that you see throughout history. I did my thesis on the Black Panther Party. In that, I definitely noted the fact that like, hey, this was an almost 80%, 70 to 80% Black woman populated organization. These were the front runners. They brag about this breakfast program, but they don't brag about the fact that like women were the ones who were on the forefronts of that, on top of most of the other programs, passing out newspapers, all that. But then you think of Black Panther Party, you think of who? Huey Newton, Fred Hampton, all of the male leaders. In their whole existence, they only had one Black female leader for about 2 years. And that's because one of the men were on the run. And I mean, like, no disrespect to the Black Panther Party, but like, that doesn't make sense. We talk about it all the time in our communities when we see predominantly Black people in them and white leaders, but we don't talk about it when we see them in our organizations or in the work that's being done by mostly Black women, but we don't see them in any leadership positions. And so, like, at this point, I'll tell anybody, I'm just like, look, probably anybody who is in any place of power, it's a Black woman that didn't get some credit. Like, I say it all the time. But yeah, so definitely, yeah, Black women. And going with the idea though, also that Tim brought up is the idea of like, because I was gonna say, yeah, Black women are like, unprotected, but like at the same time, yeah, the idea of protection also always gets schooled when we bring them up into conversation, because people already unbiased, well, unknowingly try to do this whole chivalry act with women and try to label it as, caring about women and not really giving them the benefit of having as much strength as us sometimes. And so like we always think of that in a combative sense, not in a, like Tim said, in like an emotional sense. And sometimes like, yeah, it really, sometimes like you said, it takes checking yourself. So like I swear, and like I date a Black woman, we're both teachers at the same school. So I'm constantly having to notice when like, hey, you're being treated way differently than her, and you're asking the same question, or you have the same concern. Why is that? And then so yeah, so like I'm definitely always having to check myself, even when I'm talking to her, and realizing that yeah, your problems are not the same as hers. Like she gets treated differently for being in that space as a Black woman. And so yeah, I definitely try to like, yeah. So yeah, I try to check my bias on that. And yeah, I don't even remember the root of the question, but I just wish the rest of the world just, check their biases when it came to Black women as well.
Well, thank you for that. I think you answered it well. Both of you guys did. So when we're talking about the recent movements, and you both have mentioned about how this is this is a continuance. It just has a new name, or the name has evolved. But I'm going to ask, how do you guys think it has evolved for the better, and what do you think still needs some tweaking to it?
Is this a question in terms of the
Just
movement or
movement in general. So, like what I was saying, as far as we've discussed about how protesting and the movement and the evolution has been dated back years. So this is a continuance. We do always still see that there is an issue that needs to be rectified. But I'm asking, as far as with this current state of protesting, how much has it evolved for the better, and what is some things that we can actually work on? Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay.
That's a very, very interesting conversation to have, because it makes me think back further than America Grounds. It makes me think about, what our ancestors did in terms of, this type of work that we're talking about, or the movement that spiraled forward. There were more than 300 slave rebellions that we only hear of two, but there were more than 300 slave rebellions over maybe like a 350-year period. So that means that there was almost one slave rebellion, a big slave rebellion every year, that people were in slavery, just about, that we never hear of. We hear about Nat Turner, and we hear about, Harriet Tubman, but we never hear of these other 298 slave rebellions. Why don't we hear about those? We hear about, Black Wall Street. Well, that's a lie. We don't hear about Black Wall Street. We're starting to hear about Black Wall Street from our own cultural textbooks, but we don't hear about Wilmington and the Wilmington riots and the murders. We don't hear about the 9th Street in Little Rock that was torn down, and a guy named John Smith was hung and burned in the middle of the street, and they took his body parts and essentially rode down Broadway with these body parts. We don't hear about, the massacres and the uprisings as much as we should. And what this does is takes away the blueprint. It makes Martin Luther King Gundy, and he wasn't Gundy. He was very strong forward about what he wanted. And over the course of his time, he became an economist. He wanted to know, okay, when he started the Poor People's Campaign, hey, let's talk about funds. Why didn't we hear about the Poor People's Campaign in our civil rights books or in our history books? And Malcolm X is a monster that comes out the closet and he wants to kill every white person he sees. But when you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you will see that he has one of the most evolutionary stories of any leader. So we get these half truths about the movement. So it's kind of like now we look at the movement as it is in 2020, and it's tougher for us to segue through because every time we've uprose or caused some type of direct action, it's been titled riot. Like the situation with Lakeisha, the 14-year-old that was killed in California, shot in the head, after she bought orange juice, or was condemned to stealing orange juice, was shot in the back of the head. People were angry about that because the person that shot in their head got 5 months probation. But it's not titled, group of angry people mad are arguing or uprising about such and such thing. It's a riot. But we call the riot of early 1800s the Boston Tea Party. Like it was a tea party, like it was something fun that was going on. We call these, we pick and choose in America what we want to select as a movement is what I'm getting at. And as Black people, we don't have the blueprints of all of our movement. And we just talked about Black women. If they added in the Black women's contribution to the movements that we've had, that would lay out the landscape for over thousands of movements. But if all that has been taken away from us, all we go off today is the way we feel. And it's not linked arm to arm as they were in the 60s. It's not suit and tie, everybody meet here Sunday. It's a lot more emotion-based. And I think it's emotion-based because we're being constantly triggered. Versus, civil rights era, you knew, okay, when I walk into a bathroom, this bathroom says white, this one says Black. Cool. It's in my face. But now I go to work and George Floyd dies and none of my coworkers want to talk about the issue that's going on. We talk about COVID, but nobody wants to talk about Breonna Taylor or any type of issues dealing with the racial pandemic side of things. So I definitely think this movement is definitely emotional based, but I think it's power in the emotion. I think emotion is the most powerful force in the world. And I think that we're aiming not just at people, but we're aiming at policy now. Not saying our ancestors didn't, but a lot of times they didn't have a resource to aim at the policy because they had to get free. They had to be liberated before they could even get to that point or get to those levels. I think we're aiming a lot more at policy now. And I know my generation, we like to talk about getting a bag this, bag that, get your bag. But, I think that we've found a creative way to include the getting the bag in our progressive movement today. So if you look at the word policy is the language of economics, spoken in the political realm. So economics comes from the word economics, which it means good for the people, or managing household, managing good household techniques that are good for the people. So it has nothing to do with money as much as it has to do with management of resources. So we manage
the etymology. I like the etymology. Sorry.
Thanks. So I'm building here. I'm building. And I'm gonna let you have it. But we get into this thing about economics and getting into our bag. Managing a bag is managing the resources provided to you. And a lot of times in the city, we don't have those resources. So we have to learn early to manage the things that are around us, even though it's non-existent sometimes. So Black people are the real economists because we learn to manage resources that we don't have. So it's time for us to translate that into managing the fund. So we have resources, we have economics, which is to manage the resources. Money is the result of good managed resources. That's all that is. If I got 3 candy bars and I sell all 3 of them, I manage good resources. So that's what you call economy or being an economist. And then I get the money on the back end, but the money don't come first. So, it's a lot of it's a lot of language being used in this movement that I've never heard before. And I get on these Zoom calls talking to people from Atlanta, New York, California, and they're using language that disrupts in quiet rooms. And they're not even dictionary textbook words. And I'm just like, wow, like we have some real deal readers in our generation. We have some real deal leaders, some real deal speakers, and they don't just look like people in their mid 40s. They look 7 years old. They look 8 years old. They look 13. They look disabled. They look LGBT. They look so many different ways. It's like you don't know where the movement is coming from now. You know, it just kind of jumps out on you. So I think that's one of the benefits that we're taking and moving forward with. We have so many different ways to weaponize our knowledge and the things that we've inherently learned from our ancestors. And I think we're just moving forward with it.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Kevin, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, before I build off, can you ask me that question again so I can make sure I'm coming back to the point?
Yes. So I was asking, we previously talked about how the movement is dated way before what it is today. So I'm asking, how much has it evolved on a positive note, and where are some areas where we can actually make some adjustments?
Yeah, all right, yeah. So cool. All right. Kind of moving off of what Tim said. Like he said, we're definitely leaning towards that policy realm a lot. To the point of where like, but it's like I feel like something that I kind of push Tim on is this idea that we're definitely facing overt racism these days. I mean, covert racism these days. It was definitely, like you said, way more in your face then. Now it's more so coded that policy is just like words. Like you said, like it's just people using big words in the room sometimes. And it gets to the point to where everything is a gray area. Everything is fine. And it slows down our progression sometimes because I feel like it puts us in this idea of that really, and I'm telling you, it slows us down. It's the reason that we aren't in arms anymore to me, because a lot of us feel free. A lot of us already feel free, so we don't feel like these are our issues. A lot of us kind of agree with a lot of the things we see in the media sometimes, and it's also some, not even that all of us feel free. Being a sociologist, like being a sociologist that like hates capitalism almost, I'm telling you, like sometimes I sit and I think about being a leader and how complicated, how like you want to look up to leaders like Martin Luther King, you want to look up to leaders like Malcolm X, you want to look up to these grassroots marching leaders, and then you have to acknowledge the fact that that was 50, 60 years ago. And while that seems like such a small time in terms of a lifespan, when we think about what happens to the economy and stuff like that, it gets so complex where I'm telling you, sometimes I feel defeated. I'm just like, honestly, how can I help lead a movement? And I'm expected to work like an 8-hour job. I mean, an 8-hour job at 5 days a week. Like, how can you make the balance? I remember one time, it was when a jail was being built here that ended up getting built. I was back in school and I was having a conversation with people about like how stupid it was to build a jail in Helena where it is predominantly Black, a white flight city. So like even though it's predominantly Black, it's controlled by white people. White people stay in the county area around it. So we're really probably outnumbered. We just don't have the numbers to show it. But for them to put that in the middle of our city, knowing that it has to be filled, who's going to fill it? Of course, it's going to be filled by those people that are economically disenfranchised in the middle of that city. Either way, I'm having this conversation with somebody, and they told me, they said, "So what are you going to do about it?" I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, I'm 2 hours away. I'm in school. I got like an exam this week. I don't really know much I could do, but maybe trying to make some people aware back home that this is a problem. But like having people like legit tell you, like, hey, what are you going to do about it? And you go, do I have the time? Do I have the money? Do I have the support? It really makes you question yourself, but it also makes you acknowledge the fact that like this is also a part of that overt racism that they work you so hard because they know Black people are some of the most essential workers, the ones who still going to work today, the ones who are like having to do all of that bottom dollar work that makes you so busy that you can't do it like we used to do back in the grassroots. when Black like neighborhoods were all they had. They can contribute that money to Dr. King to go preach somewhere, to go march. Now people barely making it by. Like you said, they're managing. We're learning the economics by managing money that we don't even have, and so it really puts us in a position where you're just like, how do you, and like, so like I get upset all the time. Like I swear, I talk stuff every day. I'm like, if I ask people to do one more thing for me to try to see how I can help this city and nobody shows up, I don't know what I'm gonna do. At the end of the day, how can I blame people who got to work, who ain't got the time to like let me know what they need? So it puts me in a bind. So to me, it puts the movement in a bind. So like I feel like we make progression, but at the same time, I feel like it's going to be a stagnant movement unless unless I don't know what, honestly. But like, yeah, it's progression in the sense of like, well, yeah, okay, and that's what I was going to push at. Was the fact that like even with the lack of monetary contributions that you can make, the lack of like time, even, it's just something about this idea that like a lot of us haven't changed our mindsets yet that really still gets me. It's like the least you could do is have those talks with your kids. And that might be me as a teacher, like really hating the fact that I got some kids that like don't really understand their identity as Black people, and not even as Black people intersectionally. Like it's some Black girls out here who not understanding like how they're gonna grow up in this life. And there's some Black men out here, some Black young men out here who really just like scare me. And I'm just like, y'all parents ain't had these conversations with y'all. And yeah, so yeah, I feel like the least we can do is get out of this mindset, even if we can't do much else. But yeah, with that, I feel like there is progression. Like I feel like if I can make it, anybody can make it. So I do what I could do. And people like Tim Campbell make me happy.
Maybe you happy, make me happy too, bro.
This is actually a great segue into my next question, and that is, I like to know exactly how did you guys get started with being protest organizers?
Oh, please, let me go first. Oh, okay, y'all ready for this? Okay. So I feel like what got me, I'm gonna say into activism even. I'm gonna say into activism even. Sorry, Hendrix, if this brings y'all down a little bit. I love y'all. Thank you for graduating me. I enjoyed the knowledge that I picked up from y'all. However, the culture at Hendrix is what led me into activism. I love basketball to death. As a basketball player in high school, I was very well rounded. Like for, for like my surroundings, I was very well rounded. I mean, I was, a cool kid, made great grades, played basketball. So going to Hendrix on their Aspire Scholarship, which is a great scholarship, I love it. Got me through my 4 years with little to no problems. But so in coming to Hendrix, I decided to play basketball. In their basketball program, that's when I really started realizing that, oh, okay, so you're a Black guy at a white school. So this is how this works. And so I felt a little uncomfortable on the team, a lot uncomfortable on the team, to the point to where I quit. I was one of 2 Black dudes on the team. Cool. So I sat out that year. The next year I thought about playing, and then I remember going into the SLTC one day during the day auction and seeing some of the fellow basketball players up there doing some, I'm just gonna call it racist stuff. They were doing racist stuff. So with that, it burned because I'm already like, look, it's one thing for you to make me uncomfortable, for y'all to make like the school uncomfortable. Like, no, like it's just, that's enough. At that point, I had made enough connections to where I felt like I could take this to people who need to be brought to. And so with that, I led a panel discussion, and that was like one of my first big like leadership steps in terms of like, promoting what I felt was injustice in my community. I mean, back in Helena, I'm not gonna lie, like I was aware enough to realize all the economic injustice that was going on. I mean, I knew there was some racist stuff going on, but like when you're around Black people all the time, I didn't have the mindset. I'm not gonna lie. It was just, you hear about Helena, I'm sure you understand. But At Hendrix, yeah, some about it, I just was not comfortable with people playing with me like that. Yeah, so I helped put together the discussion, the panel, and then so like from then on out, like yeah, it was like I don't know if y'all saw that new Netflix show. It's called Woke, but I don't know. After that, I just was like, this is my campus. Like this is our campus. Like it's black people on this campus. It's people of color on this campus. And if y'all do anything, I want to hear about it. I'm gonna take it to somebody. We're gonna get it done. And which brings me also to the last point that I had to make when I was at Hendrix that really still disappoints me to this day because I haven't heard any follow up about it. It happened like a week or two before we got let out of school, which was regarding two black young women at my school being subjected to racial slurs in the class. We were trying to get it figured out. We had actually put together some nice steps, but unfortunately, they didn't follow through once, or not anything I know of. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't really follow through that much. So it definitely still had me a little riled up. And then pandemic pops, and then boom, back home. George Floyd happens and Breonna Taylor happens. It just, yeah. So then I realized, bringing all the knowledge that I did get at Hendrix, that did wake me up about all the injustice that's in my community. I decided to take my activism to my community. And so, yeah, since then, maybe a since then could come later, but yeah, that's basically what got me into organizing. Yeah.
Okay, so that pretty much puts you in a position where it's like, okay, I see something, I need to make a change. Let me go ahead and take this effort. And it kind of gave you kind of like some background on how to make this happen. You just consistently put yourself in a position where you're learning and you're pursuing and making progression in your city. I love that. I love that. Tim, is there anything you'd like to add? How exactly did you get started with the organizing the protests in Little Rock?
I think for me, I just felt a strong sense of responsibility. As Kevin said, we all should feel that responsibility when it comes down to the issues that we're facing, and I felt a strong responsibility on multiple levels, being that I was raised in the inner cities, so that level of on the lower scale, lower end of the socioeconomic ladder. Also, the end, I had traveled to West Africa. I had been there for 2.5 years. So
Me too.
A word? Oh, we got talking to do.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. I want to know where far you from.
Very great. So I traveled there and I was in the Gambia 2.5 years. And you get a lot of time to think. You get a lot of time to think. You get a lot of time to figure some things out. So I had plenty of time to indulge my mind in different political sciences, different um, direct action policies, and just kind of wrap my mind around my life, my trauma, my inner child, and things like that. And a lot of healing is what put me in a place to actually do some of this work because I was able and privileged to get out of the inner cities to be able, which no slack to people that did not. A lot of my friends are still trying to get out of that bubble, but being able to jump out of that and being blessed to come out of that to see it from another side, another angle of view, allowed me to re-examine myself and who I was and who I thought I was coming up. I wasn't just a guy off the block. I wasn't just, a football player or like Kevin said, a basketball player. I was more than that, And so, moving to Africa, it taught me, a lot of different characteristics that, I never would have got. Never would have got. I'm sure Kevin can. Like I never would have got certain things if I didn't move there. Humbleness, patience, pride and tribemanship, pride and I wasn't there for a member of none of the tribes, but I felt like I was after about 2 weeks, because they instill this sense of identity in you that this is who you are, and they remind you that constantly, where I was at. And I lived there, no lights, well, no electricity, no water, no running water as we know it. I lived, in the village, maybe like 5 or 6 miles inside the road. So, I had a lot of time to figure some things out. a lot of time to do some reading. And so when I got back, I was doing some work at UAPB, helped building the Peace Corps prayer program that they have now, which is pretty much kind of helping students, HBCU students, engage in global affairs and global careers later on after graduating. And I got into the Clinton School, and the Clinton School was like the missing piece for a lot of the knowledge that I had been studying, reading. It was like that missing piece because it's built on 3 projects. My first project happened to be a project on South Main and Little Rock, dealing with gentrification, dealing with community development. Exactly what I needed. Exactly what I needed, because I got to see, what the history of redlining, the history of, different disparities when it comes down to housing, and how that, where you go to school at is based off where you live at. Where you live at is based off your socioeconomic status. Your socioeconomic status is based on your family identity and history of funds. And it's just like, wow, all this stuff is connected. So Clinton kind of provided me, and they didn't know this, but they kind of provided me this secret bookshelf of knowledge to delve on, and for those reasons, I felt responsible. And I don't like tokenism, and I don't like this idea of elitism. But I think if you got it, you need to use it. I think if like I know the Bible says, if you bring if you don't bring forth what's within you, it'll kill you. If you bring forth within you, it can save you. So I just felt a strong need to bring forth voice. I didn't have a lot to give. I ain't had no T-shirts. I ain't had no chants. I ain't no chants. I just knew that, hey, I want to get out here and I want to say something, that may have an impact on particularly the youth, because they're going to be fighting this fight longer than we're going to be fighting this fight, and their fight is going to look different. So that's what kind of jumped me and engaged me into it. I had made a flyer the night of, I think it was like May 31st. I was like, hey, I was telling my girlfriend, like, I'm gonna make this flyer and I'm just gonna post this flyer, and I'm not gonna put my name on it. I'm not gonna put, you know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna post the flyer. Everybody at the Capitol at 5. Let's have some healthy conversations. And I was expecting 12 people, and there was already some people out there, doing the work. Zaria was one of them. She's not on the call, but when I got there, she just handed me her styrofoam and was like, here you go. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm just like, whoa, And by the time I looked around, me and Zaria had stopped talking. It was almost 1,000 people behind, the steps of the Capitol. And I was just like, wow, like, everything was happening so fast. I remember, my girlfriend running up with the camera, trying to, make sure, she had got, and it was just a lot going on at one time. And, I engaged everybody, and it wasn't just me, it was also Drika Rights, also Darren Kidd, Oya, and also June Young. He's also UAPB alum, and Darren Kidd as well. We all engaged that day, and it was so powerful to see and to be able to, I didn't want to protest per se. I just wanted to provide a healthy platform for angry people to talk and say what they got to say, because I felt like there was no other place in the world for Black people at that time that was safe other than places where Black people were healthily expressing themselves. I think that that first protest motivated me to say, hey, let's just see where it goes. Let's see where it goes from here. And just like Kevin, after that first one, you're like, okay, that's how, okay, cool. It's like a ghost confidence that comes over you. And, the thing about leadership, it looks different. It's not no one definition of leadership. Leadership, you can lead from the front, you can lead from the back. I like to consider myself as a leader from the middle. I don't want to be out front. I don't want to be in the back. I want to be right in the center with the people. I want to be right in the center where the people are hurting, the people are hungry, the people need to be heard, the people that, like Kevin said, got to work 9 to 5, graveyard shift 5 to 9. You know what I'm saying? I want to be in the center with the people, with the voices. And so, leadership is also the ultimate sacrifice. It's not this moral, it's not this golden, it's not this golden chain you get like if you sign to like a big rap record or something. It's not that. You know what I'm saying? It's this vulnerable position, that that's motivated by God, apparently, that you're in this position. It's extremely vulnerable. One wrong word, one wrong action, one wrong anything. You know what I'm saying? And you got to accept fault, and you got to accept accountability. And you're in this vulnerable spot. So, I tell a lot of younger men, leadership ain't this, do what I say, and you know what I'm saying, do as I do. It's not that. That's hegemonic, you know what I'm saying? That's hegemonic dictation. Leadership is something that comes from your heart, and it's the ultimate sacrifice. It's putting yourself out, for people that can't do it. You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of people at the protest that couldn't go to jail. They couldn't go to jail. The police came, they had to leave. They have felons, they had warrants. They couldn't go in the back. They couldn't be paddywhacking. There was a lot of people that, couldn't stay. They were pregnant. A lot of people couldn't stay. They had to be at work. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people was looking out from their jobs. Firemen were looking out from the top of the building. So that form of leadership looks different. And I'm glad, that God put me in a position to be able to, provide that healthy platform, because that's essentially what I wanted to do.
Well, thank you both so much. I know that we are at a point now where we're almost 10 minutes into closing. So I believe at this time we'll probably answer some questions if we have any in the chat.
Just to build off his point real fast.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Tim made a really great point in regards to leadership, especially. Also, Tim, yeah, I definitely attended that rally. I definitely was there. That's really and I feel like one day I feel like when I was there, I said I gotta know who put this together, because it was definitely one of the inspiring steps for me helping put together our rally. Like, I went to you all's rally, and I helped put together and attended Clarksdale's rally as well. But yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. But yeah, definitely in regards to that leadership aspect, I think it's definitely important to realize that people need to understand where they are as leaders. And I feel like it kind of goes back to that what we were talking about Black women. I feel like when we're thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, leadership in the household, leadership in general, is this idea that it has to be the man. And it turns us to the oppressors, it turns us to the bad leaders. It really puts it brings down the progression of our movement as Black people as a whole, when we try to take after this patriarchal image of what things should look like, when if history is showing us that women are leading the movement, why are we not putting women in these leadership? You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, like you definitely brought up a really great point in that sense, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
You guys have been bringing up
Hey, hey, Dr. Chobby. Sorry, it's been a minute.
And so what's so interesting is that even on my end, being the moderator and the interviewer, it's kind of difficult not to try to jump in, but I just want to say that I'm really proud to see young Black men actually being motivated and having enthusiasm into seeing something that needs to be addressed and making a change and doing the work, along with our Black women that did that as well. I wish Zaria could have been able to attend tonight, but I understand, life does happen. But I do appreciate you all, and Drika writes, and which I'm a huge fan of her poetry. So also, and when we talk about what our crowd looks like, it was very diverse compared to what we've seen in the past. And not even just about race, but also with age. And like you were saying, Tim, about even with people with disabilities and things of that nature. But when it comes to age, I took my daughter there. And she is almost 14. So when she got a chance to go to the Capitol to see all of this, it gave her a sense of pride. Not only that, going down to 7th Street to see the mural, and she's an artist, so along with her mom. So going to see that, it actually, it gives them some sort of momentum to make something happen, even if it's not how we think it should look as far as protesting down the street or raising signs or things of that nature. Sometimes it looks like writing a poem. Sometimes it looks like doing some a painting or a drawing. So it's different types of mediums that we can use and still consider that as a voice, and also protesting and doing demonstrations. That's the reason why it says protest and demonstrations. Demonstrations is not all about walking and marching. So I commend you both. There was one last thing I did want to ask you guys is, what's the most memorable moment from your protest, from your experience?
Kevin, you can go first, man. I gotta recollect.
Man, when she said that one, I'm like, man, wait. Okay. I think I can think of mine. And I don't think she can hear me. Also, y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like a bad boyfriend. Today is my girlfriend's birthday, and I had this on her birthday. It took everything in me not to cancel on y'all because I believe in showing up as a person. But I was like, oh my God, babe, you're not gonna believe this. Like I have a discussion on your birthday from like 6:30 to 8. But
Well, I'm just gonna tell you, you just made up for it because this is broadcast and everybody can see this, and you gave her a national shout out, so you're good.
Well, here's my second shout out. I was actually gonna say, my favorite part of that protest was actually when she spoke. We had some pretty cool people speaking. I had one guy from the community to open it. The mayor, he came and talked. I even said a few words, but I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't until she spoke that I actually saw people, and it could be because I speak in Hendrick sometimes. Like I know I use some of these words that I get out of the book, but like I don't know if she just spoke to them and they're in like how they wanted to hear it, but it was also just so genuine. And it was like when she spoke, it definitely was a moment where I just saw the community go, yeah. It was when she said, you don't have to make $60,000 a year to care. Like, because a lot of people like to think of the movement as something that's like for people who got the money, who got the time. But like she said, it only takes caring to really create a change. And when she said that, a lot of people, yeah, you can feel everybody go, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway from mine.
Okay. Now, Tim, what about you?
I got to steal and take two. I got two takeaways too. Let me just do two real quick.
That's fine.
I think that something that stood out to me was gaining the attention of people on the inside. Um, I think that was major because a lot of states, a lot of protesters, thousands of protesters, were out in the streets, but it, to be brought in by the governor, was just like major because it was just like, what? I didn't honestly think it would get that far. And when I sat down, me and Drake and Kid, we sat down. He was like, "So what do you want?" And I just was like, "Oh, like this is happening." Like this is not a dream. This is not a drill. This is happening. I'm actually in a position to articulate to the best of my experience and my ability what exactly the state of our, not just our state, but our cities, our inner cities, our people should look like. And it was just like, wow, like that was a amazing, time because I think it gave so many other people hope. Like, wow, like, okay, so I thought that if you protest, that's all you're doing. Like, oh, if you protest, like somebody would hear your voice. And I think that was a lot of the counter arguments to protesting, like, well, they ain't gonna hear you anyways, or they're not gonna listen to you anyways, or you just out there, or what you doing? Like they paying you, like, but to actually be able to be in a seat to make change, leading into the task force and leading to, conversations with, people all around the state, powerful people, community activists, and just have conversations on what Arkansas is gonna look like, not today, not tomorrow, but or not 10 years from now, but next year was just powerful. And I was just glad that, God allowed me, the ability to, sit in that seat because, they say either you're at the table or you're on the menu. So I was just happy, to be in that seat. And also another powerful moment, I would have to say, I would have to just go off Kevin and just speak of the powerful Black women in my life that also ensured, my ability to go throughout this, because it was my girlfriend that had to hear every night. They would Channel 7-Eleven would put me on the news and they would show fire, and that would just make me so mad because I'm like, y'all know I ain't had no fire in my protest. Why would y'all put that on there? And she was have to watch me jump up and be mad and, this, and the third, and calm me down and really just be my peace, going forth, and I really also want to give her that national shout out as well. And also my little sisters, I got 4 little sisters, and they attended all the protests. Well, yeah, they attended all protests. And I got a younger sister, her name is Kingsley. She's just 6 years old and she's in 1st grade. And she was there, but I didn't know that she was really taking in what was happening. And so I have a beautiful picture of her rolling with a picture of George Floyd walking next to me in the protest. I'm like, girl, how'd you get beside me? You're supposed to be back there. She was literally right beside me, holding that sign. And, also to hear, I had a 1-year-old holding my little cousin. She's holding the sign. So just seeing these powerful images was just powerful to me. And also to, like my little sister, every time she gets to speak now, she wants to lead the chant. Like, we had a gathering at Drika's birthday. It was probably 50 people there. She spoke and she said, don't forget, y'all, Black Lives Matter. She spoke at another event and she said, power, power, power to the people. So to just hear my little sister remembering these chants at 6 years old reminds me that not only she knows what's happening, she wants to be a part of what's happening throughout the rest of her life. So those definitely 2 moments were just like wow moments for me.
And in both cases, I believe that I can speak on behalf of all of us that we are confident that the next generation of leaders are going to be a lot stronger than we are. And that is remarkable. Gentlemen, thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed you both. I actually hate the fact that this is only an hour-long discussion. I feel like we're family now, so we just may have to continue this on another time. But again, thank you. Is there anything you would like to add, maybe advice or anything? Is there anything you'd like to add before we leave?
I would just like to say thank you all for having me. It's great kind of being back. But for real, it's nice meeting you for the first time. I'm glad that they brought someone of your stature into this place for real. Like the whole time I was there, trust me, they heard it from me, how much I got tired of not having people who look like us in those positions. But also on top of that, I guess the only thing I could say is care, y'all. Just try to care.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Tim, is there anything you'd like to add? I think you're muted.
Going off of what Kevin said, I definitely think care is a big impact. And I think it's also important to find your place in the movement. Whatever that may look like. It doesn't always look like hitting the streets. It doesn't always look like holding a sign. It doesn't sometimes it looks like Kevin said, teaching your children. Sometimes it looks like having tough conversations with coworkers and counterparts that may be white or may be Caucasian. Sometimes it looks like, shopping with Black-owned business for Thanksgiving and Christmas. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes it looks different. Just pick your place and just don't let nobody devalue your place in the movement, because, the movement has looked a lot of different ways, multifaceted, and pick your face, and stand on it and move forward with that. Thank you guys for having me. Also great to be in dialogue with someone like Kevin, a young up and coming leader that's actually not afraid to do the work, especially, being a Black male from, the I like to call it the country. But just, I understand, the difficulties. I was listening to someone from the Clinton School today named Brentita, and she's from Osceola, and she was talking about how they had one Walmart, and if you make it to college, you're a superstar, and if you graduate college, you're like everybody's hero. So I'm sure you're 1,000 people's hero right now, man. I just continue to do the work you're doing, and hey, everybody else, just pick your place in the movement and march on.
Okay, thank you so much.
Also, this has been moderated so well, Mrs. Sims. Like, all the way through, your facilitation skills have been great. Being able to just listen on this conversation. I'm glad you called us in. You have a powerful choosing, and thanks again.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, if there is nothing else, thank you all for tuning in. Hey, Sarah.
Hey there. Thank you guys. Program, great conversation, and really appreciate everything that you guys contributed. Thanks for being part of our exhibition programming. Take good care.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great night.